The minute I saw Zoltrak as an achievement in the game, I knew. It was only a matter of time before Frieren would be a playable character. Turns out, we get Fern instead because the sheer amount of Zoltraks that Phoebe can unleash is mesmerizing. Phoebe is our new Spectro Rectifier user, and she will be coming in with flashy animations, a bird for some reason, and if it weren't for her holy ties to the church, then I'd be convinced that she was a witch. Instead, she's more of a wizard. Of course, to actually play her, you need to be a devout wizard, or an academic master, because her kit, that's a lot of words. Lucky for you, you got the resident Void Enigma to explain the chaos that is Phoebe. I'll go over her kit, her echo options, best weapons, and her team options, and finally, if she can stand toe-to-toe with Jinhsi, or if she will instead become Jinxi's best partner. But before we get into our residential church mage, I have something special for you today. Have you seen these champions? Alice in Wonderland is coming to Raid Shadow Legends, and I couldn't be more excited. I was skeptical at first, but the strategy and depth in this game actually won me over. From the hundreds of unique bosses to endless gameplay options, including PvP where you actually get to control your own champion, Raid literally has it all. To help you get started, download Raid now using my link in the description or the QR code on screen to get 2 epic heroes. Tagore when you start your journey, and Ugo when you reach level 15, which you could literally do in the first day. But what's a great start without a great champion? Use the promo code MonkeyKing within 48 hours to claim the amazing legendary hero to dominate the early game. And now is the perfect time to join. You'll be able to log in for 7 days during the Alice's Adventure event and get Alice the Wanderer, a legendary champion completely free. She is a nuker who you'll be able to decimate the bosses with. This event has so many rewards for new players as well, so you don't want to miss out. I'm running this channel all on my own, from thumbnails to recording and editing, and it's thanks to sponsors like this that I'm able to keep bringing you all great content. You can support the channel simply by using my link in the description or the QR code on screen and download Raid Shadow Legends today. So go ahead and try Raid through my link or QR code to start your Raid journey today. Alright, let's get right back to the video. Boy, where do I start with this? It's a lot of words and a lot of things happening in her kit, but like any Wuwa kit, it's easier when put into practice. She has 2 separate forte gauges, the first one being called Prayer. When it's full, you'll be able to activate one of 2 modes. DPS mode, Absolution, or Sub-DPS mode, Confession. Absolution is activated by holding down the basic attack when her forte gauge is filled, and Confession is activated by holding down the resonant skill when her forte gauge is filled. After it's activated, it will use all of her first forte gauge, all of her prayer, and this will recharge after 24 seconds, so you can only swap modes every 24 seconds. Now, once you activate a mode, she now has her second forte gauge active, Divine Voice. Her main DPS mode is great for dealing a frick ton of upfront damage, and her sub-DPS mode is made for sub-DPS damage off-field by stacking Spectro Frazzle. Both modes can apply Spectro Frazzle and deal damage, but one mode of course does it much better than the other. Just to remind you of what Spectro Frazzle even is, it's a damage over time effect that Spectro Rover will be able to inflict, and it stacks up to 10. Now, in Absolution DPS mode, you can cast Zoltrak. This is done after her basic attack 3 or after a dodge counter, and this will deal a significant amount of damage, and when the opponent actually has Spectro Frazzle, it does even more damage. In Confession Sub-DPS mode, this action will actually apply 5 Spectro Frazzle instead. Once you use her entire gauge, you have 2 options. You can again decide if you want to use her DPS mode or her sub-DPS mode by using either her heavy attack for DPS mode or holding the resonant skill down for her sub-DPS mode. This action will refill her forte gauge and let her continue attacking. That's just her forte, however. Her resonant skill has actually a lot more gimmicks. Her resonant skill will summon a ring which will immobilize the enemy for 2 seconds, and I'm smelling some type shop shenanigans here. Using it shortly after casting it the first time will let you teleport inside the ring. This does take some getting used to, so be careful not to just teleport in and get smacked around and get hit or something like that. This lasts for a suitable 30 seconds, and the ring boasts some unique properties depending on whether you're standing in it or standing outside of it. Outside the ring, the basic attack and dodge counter will refract holy right onto the target inside. When she is inside the ring, then she will be performing consecutive attacks when she uses her basic attacks. Inside the ring is generally better, so get up close and personal if you want to get that good damage. Now her liberation is, you guessed it, damage, except it depends on which mode you're in. Absolution DPS mode equals big nuke. Confession Sub-DPS mode equals small nuke plus a ton of Spectro Frazzle on the target. Next, let's talk about her outro skill because just like the rest of her kit, it comes in parts. Firstly, her outro does a lot of damage, like it actually is a significant portion of her damage. Absolution DPS mode deals exponentially more damage to the target, but Confession DPS mode has some perks, and by some I mean a lot. It will cause the incoming resonator to reduce the spectral resistance of nearby enemies and also doubles the Spectro Frazzle damage. In addition, it will extend the time that Spectro Frazzle will be on the enemy, and this outro lasts a whopping 30 seconds, and it doesn't get cancelled when you swap out to the next resonator. It will, however, be cancelled if she actually activates her Absolution DPS mode. Now, you first have to decide which way you want to play Phoebe, and there are 3 ways. Absolution DPS mode, Confession Sub-DPS mode, and the best of both worlds, swapping between both modes in combat. Once you've decided how you actually want to play her, you can play her strictly in that form, either dealing a ton of damage or stacking Spectro Frazzle, or you can actually swap between both forms to deal damage and then stack Spectro Frazzle after. If you decide to play her in both forms, then you'll actually have to really practice on swapping her in and out between forms because it does take a lot of button manipulations and you have to know what each of these buttons actually do. With enough practice, this will be easy, but it will require a few days of just really playing around with her. There are many ways to achieve this, and when she actually gets released, we can dive into which way is better, but it's gonna come down to something like this. When Phoebe hits the field, you'll use her resonant skill, then you'll hold down the basic attack to go into Absolution mode, making sure that the enemy has some Spectro Frazzle on them before by using the Zoltrock, then activating her liberation. From there, spam Zoltrocks, you'll have 4 of them. Once you deplete her gauge, you will hold down the resonant skill, allowing you to enter Confession mode. From here, you will immediately outro onto the next opponent. They'll do all their jazz, and then you can swap back to Phoebe, cast her resonant skill, follow up with 2 Zoltrocks holding down the heavy attack because it'll be 2 because you're in Confession mode. You'll get 4 when you're actually in Absolution mode. Then you'll be able to actually hold down the heavy attack as I was saying, and you'll have 4 more Zoltrocks to continue the onslaught. You won't be able to achieve the next mode quite yet, but you can on the next rotation after. This method requires a lot of work, but it does give you the best of both worlds and is much more suitable when you actually have a character that doesn't enable Spectro Frazzle. But if you have someone who can apply Spectro Frazzle and they are really built, then she'll actually be able to use that Sub-DPS mode a hell of a lot better. If the Sub-DPS isn't quite built, then staying in Absolution mode is definitely the way to go. With enough practice, you'll really be able to utilize every part of her kit, and it is a blessing to be able to perfectly use her. Just like how leaving a like on this video and subscribing would be a blessing for this channel, so go ahead and do that, cause Phoebe got you feeling real gracious, right? Okay, now that you more or less know how to use her, let's go into her echo option. Her best and signature set will be the brand new Spectro Frazzle set introduced in Renacida Eternal Radiance. This set will increase the crit rate for the character when they actually inflict Spectro Frazzle, and in case you haven't noticed, Phoebe and every portion of her kit involves Spectro Frazzle, not just the Confession portion of her kit. Additionally, it starts with 10% Spectro damage bonus, and that'll be boosted up to 25% Spectro damage bonus when the enemy has 10 Spectro Frazzle. Solid set, and for the 4 costs, you've really only got one option, and that's going to be the Nightmare Morning Ikes. In case you didn't know how to actually get that, go ahead and check out this video here and follow the guide to actually unlock Nightmare Echoes, but you will have to unlock this one because there's no other 4 cost Echo that's part of the Eternal Radiance set. For the main stat, you will want to go with either crit rate or crit damage for your ratio, and Spectro Frazzle seems to scale directly off of level of both the character and the enemy, and nothing else, so crit is still definitely the best way to go. For the 3 cost piece, you want to go with the Spectro damage, or you can go with attack percent, whichever one has the best substats, and for the 1 cost piece, for the main stat, definitely go with attack percent. As for the substats, you'll definitely want to go with crit rate and crit damage as the top priority. You'll want 1 to 2 energy recharge substats, and then attack percent or flat attack, as those two will directly buff every portion of her kit. The other substats that are somewhat useful, but not so much useful, is basic attack damage, heavy attack damage, and liberation damage bonus. Just remember that attack percent and flat attack will always be the best option. If you're trying to build a Spectro Frazzle set and actually have a Celestial Light set, you can definitely use it in place, but you definitely want to upgrade to the Spectro Frazzle set in due time. Alright, Phoebe's weapons. She has many options. Of course, her signature weapon, Luminous Heim, is her best in slot. This weapon gives a staggering 36% crit rate, along with 12% attack, and the bonus of increasing her heavy attack and basic attack up to 42%. Additionally, it increases Spectro Frazzle damage when she triggers her outro, so you always get a mini confession outro with this weapon. This signature weapon is loaded for Phoebe, and you should consider it if you actually want to make her your main, but this weapon leaves a lot to be desired for other characters, as the passive just isn't great, especially if they don't specialize in Spectro Frazzle. That being said, if you use this alongside Spectro Rover, then you'll always have a user who can actually use this weapon slightly and get the amazing benefits out of it. Now with that being said, String Master is always an amazing choice. How many times is String Master going to be the second best in slot for all of these characters, or a semi-best in slot? So String Master also suits her sub-DPS role slightly more than her main DPS role, but either way it's just an amazing weapon. Just make sure you are using Phoebe's resonant skill to get more out of the passives. Now, the Rain Drake Spout is a good option, as this weapon gives a ton of crit damage, and she can also use the passive as it grants the basic attack damage bonus for on-field characters, but the other effects on the passive are not too useful. Still a great option. If all else fails, definitely go with the standard weapon, Cosmic Ripples, as that will boost her attack damage by quite a bit and give her some much needed energy recharge. Those are the 5-star weapon options, but she actually has quite a few 4-star options as well, and there's one that's going to be introduced in the next update that is specifically designed for Phoebe. And that is going to be the event weapon, Ocean's Gifts, and this will boost Spectro Frazzle damage by a significant margin. Not as good as the 5 stars, but still an amazing weapon on her, and probably competes with the Cosmic Ripples. In addition, there's also the Waltz of Masquerade, which boosts the damage to enemies that are affected by negative effects, and Spectro Frazzle is definitely one of those. Spectro Frazzle is definitely one of those effects. The Spectro Frazzle 4-star will definitely be a better option, so just keep that in mind. Lastly, we have the Augment, which gives a lot of crit rate and offers an attack percent bonus when you actually cast your Resonance Liberation, so it is a great choice for her, and that makes crit ratio much easier to build if you're lacking the 5-star options. The other 4-star rectifiers aren't really worth considering, especially when you have the free event weapon coming, but if you want to go with a Spectro Frazzle support set, then you can consider Variation. But her damage will be lacking, so it's definitely better to go with a damage dealing weapon. Alright, it's the moment you've been waiting for, the team options. And before we begin, I'd like to seriously thank Kuro Games for letting our main character shine as brightly as Spectro Flashing Rover. Kuro Games gave Spectro Rover an insane buff and added Spectro Frazzle to her kit, and this makes her undeniably Phoebe's best in slot partner, especially if she's going to stick to Absolution DPS mode. With the combined effort of Phoebe and Rover, they are able to keep up a full stack of Spectro Frazzle with ease, and Rover buffs Phoebe as well as Phoebe buffing Rover for an all-around great time. These two will be Phoebe's best in slot for general play, and what makes this even better is that everyone has Spectro Rover, of course. So if you get Phoebe, make sure to raise Spectro Rover because they work perfectly together. Other than Rover, she has a lot of teams that actually work with her. She can be used alongside the likes of Sanhua to buff her basic attack damage, and she can be used with Mortefi to buff her heavy attack damage, which is probably the better option. If you're going to use her in both forms, then you can run her alongside characters that have quick swaps such as Yunlin, Chun-Li, and Carlotta, although I wouldn't really recommend those three unless you really know what you're doing or know how to quick swap really well. All of these teams speak about her main DPS presence, but what about her specific sub-DPS presence? Surprisingly, she makes an excellent sub-DPS with many characters thanks to the constant stream of Spectro Frazzle. She can be played alongside any character, and she's actually a great support for Jinhsi. And here's where you thought that they'd be compared for damage. Instead, they work alongside one another. While Spectro Frazzle isn't considered the best because it's not a coordinated attack, Phoebe still offers a decent amount of off-field damage to help fuel Jinhsi's laser beam. Plus, with Phoebe's outro, she will be an excellent buff to Jinhsi as she can reduce the spectral resistance on all of the enemies. This team isn't nearly as good as the Zheji Jinhsi combo, but it is a suitable alternative. Additionally, she literally works with every other character thanks to Spectro Frazzle being a damage over time. Basically, when the boss is moving around or can't be hit, they'll still be taking the Spectro Frazzle damage, so keep that in mind. You can always consider her in every team when you actually take on the holograms thanks to her immobilization ability with her resonance skill. Phoebe is an all-around great character in every stage of the game with a well-rounded kit, but she doesn't really excel at anything either. She is a suitable DPS, but her damage isn't as significant as, say, Jinhsi. That's not a bad thing though. Jinhsi is just in another caliber of her own. With enough dedication to learning exactly how Phoebe works, they'll still compete, but that nuke is just really hard to beat. Unless, of course, that nuke doesn't crit. Phoebe is versatile like a mage, and with the infinite amount of Zoltrox at her disposal, she is a great character for your account, and she is very free-to-play friendly, thanks to her best partner being, you guessed it, the main character. Whom is free, of course. She isn't exactly easy to play, but she isn't hard to master. It's just actually knowing what all of her skills do. Did I mention that in midair she actually has a broomstick, and she'll be able to fly around on this bird? Yeah. Phoebe has a lot going on, but she'll be a fun addition to your account. Now go out there and spam Holy Light, and make sure that you're blinding all of the enemies in the process. Go ahead and like this video and subscribe for more amazing enigmatic content. Check out Raid Shadow Legends with a pinned comment in the description, and thank you so much for watching. This has been Void Enigma, and until next time, Enigma out.